regions of the brain out of the several hundred that exist. And we're finding that we are able to express in rather precise mathematical models how those regions process information and encode it and send it to the next region. And we built mathematical models and simulations. This is 15 regions of the auditory cortex. And applying psychoacoustic tests to this model and simulation gets very similar results to human auditory perception. There's a simulation of the cerebellum. That's a very important region that comprises more than half the neurons in the brain, responsible for our skill formation. Walking, talking, catching a fly ball is governed by this region. We have a very good simulation of that region. Brings up the issue, well, how complicated is the human brain? Well, an actual mature brain has a lot of complexity in it. By my estimate, it's thousands of trillions of bytes to characterize a brain. But the design of the brain is actually much simpler. The design of the brain is characterized in the human genome. The genome has the design of the body and the brain. Well, how much data is in the genome? Actually, very little. There's 800 million bytes in the genome. Even if you assume that the junk DNA is not junk, and the latest thinking is that it's not, it has important information about gene expression. So assume that all of that information is important. The junk DNA is replete with redundancies. It has sequences that are repeated many times, like ALU is repeated 300,000 times. If you just compress the data compression to compress out the redundancy, you get 30 to 50 million bytes, which is smaller than Microsoft Word. And you might wonder, well, how could that be? How could something that simple comprise the complexity of the human brain, which in a mature brain is millions of times, actually billions of times, more information than that? Well, we see that in our computer systems all the time. We can have a evolutionary algorithm that is fairly compact. It then creates a simulated evolutionary process and creates then an intelligent result by interacting with a complex environment that is much more complex than the program it started with. That's essentially how the genome works. For example, in the cerebellum, there's only a few genes, very little information that describes how the cerebellum is wired. It says, well, there's 4 types of neurons. They're kind of wired like this. Now repeat 5 billion times and add a little bit of randomness each time. And rather simple wiring program. But then the cerebellum interacts with the complex environment. The child learns useful skills like walking and talking, and it gets filled up with meaningful information. The design is not simple, but it is a complexity that we can manage. And if you follow the trends in brain reverse engineering, it's a conservative assumption or conclusion that we will succeed in reverse engineering the several hundred regions by the 2020s. I will just skip to conclude with a few scenarios to put these trends together so we can spend the rest of the time dialoguing. But by 2010, computers won't look like this. They will largely disappear. They'll be integrated in our clothing. Images will be written to our retinas from our eyeglasses and contact lenses. We'll have full immersion visual, auditory, virtual reality. We'll be interacting with virtual personalities as the primary interface. You can see early harbingers of this already. You can call up British Airways and talk to their virtual assistant about anything you want, as long as it has to do with making reservations on British Airways. But it actually works pretty well. We'll have effective language translation. Actually, I'll show you a brief... I put together a prototype using our technology.
Dies ist eine Demonstration.
Of a prototype of a quote translating end quote telephone. Period.
Von einem Prototyp eines übersetzenden Telefons.
Within a few years, comma,
innerhalb einiger Jahre.
So, by 2029, you have to appreciate that this will be many turns of the screw in terms of this exponential progression of information technology. It'll actually be about 30 doublings in the next 25 years. That's a factor of 1 billion in capacity and price performance over today's technology, which is already quite formidable. We will have completed the reverse engineering of the human brain. We'll understand how human intelligence works. That'll give us new insight into ourselves. Non-biological intelligence will combine the suppleness and subtlety of our pattern recognition capabilities with ways in which computers already demonstrated their superiority. I mean, every time you use Google, you can see the power of non-biological intelligence. Machines can remember things very accurately. They can share their knowledge instantly. We can share our knowledge too, something animals don't do very well, but at the slow bandwidth of language. This is not an alien invasion of intelligent machines come from over the horizon to compete with us. It's emerging from within our civilization. It's really extending the powers of our civilization. I mean, even today, we routinely do intellectual feats that would be impossible without our technology. In fact, our whole economic infrastructure couldn't manage without the intelligent software that's underlying it. We will have the killer app of nanobots will be in full swing. We'll have nanobots inside our bodies, keeping us healthy, providing radical life extension. The book that we just came out with my co-author, Terry Grossman, MD, talks about 3 bridges to radical life extension. Bridge 1 being what you can do today to slow down aging and disease processes so that baby boomers like myself and my co-author can be in good shape 10 or 15 years from now when we have the full fruits of this biotechnology revolution, where we're really being able to alter these biological processes that were designed in a different era. And that'll be a bridge to the full blossoming of the nanotechnology revolution, where the killer app is nanobots that can go inside our bodies and really provide dramatic gains in life expectancy. The real application, though, of these nanobots will be to interact with our biological neurons. We've already shown the feasibility of electronics and biological neurons to interact non-invasively. We could have billions of nanobots inside the capillaries of our brain, non-invasively, widely distributed, expanding human intelligence. Right now, we have 100 trillion connections, although there's a certain amount of plasticity. It's a fixed architecture. And among the about 8 billion human brains, we have about 10 to the 26th power of my calculation of biological thinking, or the equivalent thereof. And 50 years from now, that figure will still be 10 to the 26th power, because biological intelligence is essentially fixed. Non-biological intelligence is growing exponentially. The crossover point will be in the 2020s. To get to the 2030s and 2040s, it will be the non-biological portion of our civilization that will be predominant, but still an expression of human civilization. And one last point is, every time we have these technological gains, we make gains in life expectancy. Sanitation was a big one. Antibiotics was another. We now are in the early stages of this biotechnology revolution, where we're mastering the information processes underlying biology. That will be another big gain in life expectancy. So if you watch your health today the old-fashioned way, we can actually live to see the remarkable 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And just as a reminder for our radio listeners, you're joining us at Cambridge Forum, listening to author and inventor Ray Kurzweil. And before I open the floor up to questions, and I'm going to ask a couple, and then I really want to turn this over to you guys and let you folks ask your questions, because that's what this is all about. But I was just sitting there thinking, you must give this talk and run across a lot of people who are scared of the vision that you have of the future. How do you respond to people who are scared of what you're talking about?
Well, there are aspects that I'm scared of as well. There's an intertwined promise and peril of technology in general. We don't have to look past the 20th century to see that. We had 50 million people killed in World War II and lots of other wars made possible by technology. I think, and it's not a simple discussion, that the benefits have outweighed the pain, but that's not a no-brainer, because there's been a lot of pain. I think few people would really want to go back 200 or 300 years to the type of precarious, labor-filled, disaster-prone, disease-filled, short, brutish lives that Thomas Hobbes describes. Sometimes people wax poetically about how good things were hundreds of years ago before technology encroached itself on us. But really, we have overcome a lot.